On today's World Insight, with fears of the coronavirus gripping Japan, can Japan thwart an epidemic? And later, 1,000-year-old remedies or cutting-edge plasma therapy, and everything in between. What is the most cost-effective treatment for COVID-19? And here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. With a gradual increase in confirmed cases across Japan, outside the hundreds who were infected on a cruise ship docked near Tokyo, the country is shifting its focus to preempt a spike in infections and resulting deaths. On Tuesday, the Japanese government rolled out a basic policy to stem the spread of new coronavirus, streamlining hospitals to better treat critical cases. Though the government maintains the country is safe from a large-scale epidemic, many Japanese worry that the virus may overstretch its medical system. Earlier, I talked to YOSHIKAZU KATO. He is now based in Hong Kong, originally from Japan. Let's hear what he has to say. YOSHIKAZU KATO, welcome to World Insight.
Thank you.
Tell me about your response about the latest outbreak already taking place in Japan.
I think in Japan, including the government, the society, and the citizens, we have concluded now the coronavirus is already outbreak, but not yet spreading out. So Japan has not seen the very large scale of epidemic.
The Japanese government, especially Prime Minister Abe, has been calling on businesses to do telecommuting and also to making workers going to work in shifts rather than together. How much do you think these advice will be followed by businesses? And will businesses be able to shoulder the financial risks and also pressure as a result of this?
Yes, looking back to the fourth quarter of last year, I mean, in terms of economic growth, that was negative. So now the Japanese business community, including our central bank, are worrying about, the first quarter of this year would be negative again. So our governor of the central bank, Mr. Kuroda, already responded to that. Our biggest uncertainty in the economy would be the coronavirus. Coronavirus would be the biggest uncertainty for the Japanese economy this year. So this perspective has been shared in Japanese community. So now Japanese people and societies lack of flexibility, but now our government encourages the companies and people to be more self-restrained. For example, like setting up different working hours, or relocate some production based or something like that. So now we are trying to avoid the risk from the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. On the one hand, Mr. Kato, as you know very well, there are certain technical issues. For example, the incubation period of coronavirus this time is extremely long, and there are information deficits still about what this virus is and how it spreads, even on board the Diamond Princess. On the other hand, of course, there's a public policy and health policy perspective to this as well. Now, you see, at this critical moment, how do you see, as a citizen, Japan should face up to this challenge? Do you think at this moment there's enough resources and mechanism to do so from a citizen's perspective?
From the perspective of citizen, as an expert said, the next week or two would be the critical moment.
That's right.
To tackling this coronavirus, right?
Yes.
But now we haven't seen that kind of panic. Mm. So yeah, very much critical. So we need to be self-constrained. For example, wash hands, or avoid the gathering with other people. So this is a very important thing for normal citizens. So I think this is some kind of consensus in Japan. And now, today, on Tuesday, Japanese government launched a new basic policy, to improve our medical system, or more, coordination with local government or medical institutions. Yeah. So these are the positive signal, and our policy is now getting more preemptive. rather than responding passively. So, and this is a kind of positive signal for Japanese citizens.
Yeah, and Mr. Kato, as you may know, one of the crucial issues is what about those people who got off from Diamond Princess, even though most of them were tested negative. That's how they could get off. But still, the incubation period of the disease once again told us there could be a fake negative, as we know. So some of them already now developed the symptoms and being confirmed with the novel coronavirus now. So what's going to happen to these people who went off board the ship and who are already interacting with the information they knew at the time negative with the local community? How do you think the local community is going to be able to face up to this big uncertainties?
Yes, as you mentioned and pointed out, those who are investigated as negative, when they got off. But now some guys already changed to positive. So this means, the government approach and response is somehow problematic. So now, this would create some panic in public opinion because, some problematic people, infected people are around us. So in this situation, Japanese government, first of all, we need to talk more with the hospital. So we need to improve the usage of hospital because our hospital resources are limited, right? So now Japanese government said now some hospital who has not rated with the infections, equipment, these capacity should receive some infected people to increase the resources to absorb more infected people or some people who have some symptom. However severe or relatively weak or something like that. So now Japanese government, now we are trying to talk and negotiate more with the local government and hospital and medical institutions to reduce these risks or some kind of concerns in Japanese society.
Mr. Kato, besides those on board and now off board the Diamond Princess, there are other clusters of cases going on in Japan. If I could give you some examples, the northern prefecture of Hokkaido and the western prefecture of Ishikawa. Explain to us where these places are and what do you make of their capabilities of the localities to deal with issues like this? How will the central-local government relationship work in a way?
First of all, Japan has 47 prefectures. Hokkaido is in the north, and Ishikawa prefecture is very close to East China Sea, coast area. And it's a bit relatively, the edge of the territory, not the central place unlike Tokyo or Yokohama. So, this is not that kind of the place of the center. But, as I said, we have 47 prefectures. And now, not only Hokkaido and Ishikawa you pointed out, including my hometown, Kanagawa, Shizuoka, a lot of places are happening, this infected people. So this is not only, some limited cases. It's more like national-wide issue. So that's why our government is trying to say, we need to, strengthen our coordination with local governments, not only around center or capital areas, but like Hokkaido, Ishikawa, and now we are still checking the infection routes. Where are these coronavirus coming from and to go where? So we have not confirmed yet completely in terms of professionalism. So this is, one reason why we say, the situation is still very much critical in the next or two weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, your society in Japan is experiencing something that China also experienced in the early stages of this outbreak, in a way. People are asking where to get the masks. People are asking, how can I protect myself and my families? And people are asking, do I still need to really home quarantine, or I can go to public places because I need to go shopping? And people are asking, how can I get my daily necessities? All of these information are crucial for the stability of a society in order to deal with the crisis. Mr. Kato, what do you make of the confidence you could have now about the society's capability to do all of this?
First of all, because I was born and grew up in Japan. And actually, we've been educated from our childhood. After coming home, you need to wash your hands. If you have, something like a symptom of cold, then you need to wear a mask right? You need to, avoid that contact with other people if you catch a cold. So, most of the Japanese citizens, we know what's going on, how to respond. But now the situation is abnormal. Unlike some, very normal influenza or, normal cold, it's different. So, that's why now somehow overreacted, right? So our government, encouraged the people, say we don't overreact, just very much stick to what we should do, like wash your hands, avoiding the gathering, or differentiate the working hours, or telework, all of these are what we can do to contain the coronavirus. So I think, in terms of, making some confidence, I think, first of all, we need to trust the government. So the government should be trusted. That's why you need to improve your transparency. You need to, create your credibility, including how to deal with the Diamond Princess and how to, open your information. All of the process should be, kind of, confidence-building process. And this is a more like interactive process between the government and citizen. So this is more like, very much, nationwide, and and the private and public sectors combined process. This is going to be very important. Particularly, in the summer, we are going to host the Olympics in Tokyo. So it's a very much critical time for Japan.
Are you going to go back home? I know you're traveling now outside Japan. Are you concerned about your families and parents and the friends?
Yeah, for example, some scholars or government officials, who, negotiate with China, the United States, some, travel are restricted. But, my family or my friends, they are living around Tokyo, very much cautious. For example, my mom, she's wearing mask all the time, outside of the home. And and avoid the gathering or the places a lot of people, as much as we can. But I do not think the society or citizens are under the panic. So because we have the basic knowledge, when something emergence happens, the infectious emergence happens, how do we respond, and what should not to do. So we have the basic and educated knowledge. That's why I do not think we are going to have panic or something like that.
Final question for you, Mr. Kato. Many Chinese remember dearly the help and the support coming from Japan, particularly the Japanese people, during the early outbreak of the novel coronavirus to the Chinese people by donating masks and medical supplies. The Japanese business community also acted on time. Mr. Kato, this is going to be a global fight, even though it's not yet a pandemic. At this moment, from your perspective, how do you see that? And this neighborly relations, in a way, of how encouraging we could be for one another in order to go through this very difficult process to see the end of the tunnel and the light at the end of the tunnel.
Now the society is globalized, and this is the issue of humanity. The issue of human beings. So, no border, fundamentally. So, and of course, in terms of interest between Japan and China, common interest, now there are more than 30,000 Japanese companies in China. And a lot of, very, famous automobile companies, they have their factories in China. That's why we really hope China could resolve this issue as quick as they can. And in terms of friendship and humanity, if something problems or something difficulties in China, of course we are willing to donate or help in terms of humanities. And this is another kind of confidence building process. So this is very quite good for Japan-China diplomatic relations. And now the Chinese president is scheduled to visit Japan in maybe the next couple of months, and this is going to be a very important event for Japan and China. So I think it's as is mentioned, it's a process of confidence building. So we need to share our mostly common interests. We need to fight together with this epidemic. This is a very important process for confidence building.
YOSHIKAZU Kato, thank you so much, and our hearts and minds goes to many of your family members and friends in Japan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're watching World Insight, still to come on our program. The scientific community scrambles to find a drug that can cure patients stricken by the new coronavirus. What treatments are in the pipeline? We'll find out right after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight. In regards to treating the coronavirus, new pharmaceutical drugs are listed alongside 1,000-year-old traditional Chinese remedies. For instance, clinical trials of this drug have begun in early February. Over 750 patients have been enrolled in the trials conducted in several hospitals in Wuhan. This drug has shown good antiviral activity against the SARS and MERS in cell and animal experiments. However, will they work this time? Meanwhile, there are other drugs that are being tested so far. According to China's State Intellectual Property Office, results of this specific drug's effectiveness in the COVID-19 clinical trials will be released on April the 27th. In the pursuit of curing the COVID-19, where are we now? How do scientists view the latest drug test? Earlier, I talked to Sheng Ding, Dean and Bayer Distinguished Professor of the School of Pharmaceutical Sciences at Tsinghua University. He's also the Institute Director of the Global Health Drug Discovery Institute. Let's listen in to his voice, the real people in the know. I know you and your colleagues have been working around the clock in order to find the remedies to the current novel coronavirus. But let me ask you about the latest development of looking for a potential remedy. Where are we now, according to your latest information?
Certainly from the early sequencing study, what we know is really this novel coronavirus is actually similar to what previously had been found and studied. For example, SARS and MERS. From actually those previous studies, what we have been really doing, and also what many other scientists around the world actually have been doing, is really to apply this so-called drug repurposing approach to find a new treatment, a potential treatment for this novel new coronavirus. The drug repurposing is basically looking through actually what people have previously developed for treating other diseases to find potential therapeutics that can be effective actually against this new coronavirus.
This is already jumping from, let's just say, animal test to immediate human test, and from not available in the market drug to now already in the clinical trials, testing on the real people at a time of crisis. How should we understand both the academic aspect and also the moral aspect of this? Have we thought about some of the other issues that also could be related to this if it did not work out as we wished?
What we heard about is really there's, for example, there's this compassionate use of this drug actually that has not been approved for any diseases called remdesivir, developed by Gilead previously for treating Ebola virus. Certainly, this is a drug candidate that pretty much failed actually in clinical trials, in Ebola virus clinical trials. But again, given its in vitro and also animal model data, it was suggested actually this molecule, this drug actually even not approved for treating any disease actually have some activities against very similar coronaviruses. But again, the compassionate use, this specific category of using unapproved drug for treating human diseases actually it's quite narrow. As you point out, actually, for a drug without knowing actually its full safety and efficacy data, and putting that into use in a broader actually range could be actually quite problematic. So it's always in this current situation, it would be really a balance of considering potential drugs efficacy as well as its safety profile.
Yeah. Professor Ding, as you may know, at this moment, for various reasons, some for a specific good reasons, others for more tendency of commercial reasons, and others probably even for what some consider could be bad reasons, in order to promote certain drugs or the advocacy of certain drugs or kinds of treatment these days at a time of crisis. This is understandable because things like this happen anytime when a crisis like this happens. But how to avoid researchers, academics like you, and those on the front line not being influenced or impacted in their decisions about what to use, what to research about by all of these noises in the society?
I think to really actually avoid or actually to manage such a situation, it's really to provide, especially for authoritative bodies, to really provide the public and also our medical personnel very specific information and also transparent, open information to really tell the facts. But also on the drug utility or approval process, certainly that has to really involve the regulatory agency.
Right.
Our regulatory agency also worked around the clock to really assess those different applications, as well as actually put forward actually certain guidelines and regulations in terms of actually reviewing, evaluating, and also approval of those potential treatment, as well as actually diagnostic kits.
Plasma therapy or pharmaceutical treatment. Doctors and scientists are debating which is more sustainable solution now when we face COVID-19 threats. According to the Ministry of Science and Technology from China, plasma therapy has proven effective on several cases of COVID-19, but with only just over 100 recovered patients donating plasma, the plasma supply is very limited. So which approach is the most cost-effective in the long run? And in the pursuit of improving access to new drugs and vaccines, how can we balance innovation with intellectual property rights protection? Let's listen to Professor Ding's answers. How should we compare the drugs that are being tested and developed vis-a-vis plasma, which is another thing, another front line it seems that people are enthusiastic about? Professor Ding, how would you compare these two roads? Which one would reach Rome first?
I would say if we can find a drug, either small molecule or neutralizing antibody, those actually can be, if we found such drug that is efficacious and safe enough, that can be applied massively to treat, all the patients or many patients fast. However, the plasma from a recovering patient, in principle, some of them may have actually neutralizing antibody against the coronavirus. If the antibody actually concentration is high enough, certainly the plasma actually can be efficacious in terms of treating this disease. But the problem with that is the source is actually very limited, and also that process actually is not completely defined. Again, each recovering patient, they may have a different level of neutralizing antibody, and also different neutralizing antibody, and also their plasma serum actually need to be processed to actually make sure actually those are safe, those not contain other pathogens or other identified sort of cytokines, harmful cytokines or other molecules.
So it seems that to me, if you use an analogy, Professor Ding, you're suggesting a plasma type of treatment can be firefighters for a small-scale fire, particularly for those who are extremely burned or injured. However, to treat patients on the front line with such a large number, you still have to rely on therapeutical treatment, eventually related to drugs that needs to come out. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think that's largely correct. Certainly for treating a large population of patients having effective small molecule or antibody actually is very much essential. But also the plasma for a very small scale treatment, I think it's possible. But again, the plasma from each individual is actually not identical. It's different.
Yes.
So actually filtering or selecting plasma actually from actually qualifying, selecting actually therapeutic plasma actually is very limited.
Professor Ding, as you may know, this has a lot to do with the latest development about the drugs and the direction of drugs. It also has to do with the, the genome sequence, which you mentioned earlier. So how should we make sure that the IPR is not going to be a stumbling block against developing new drugs and make them available to the people that are in crisis, but rather a good momentum for people to research about? This is a very delicate balance. Tell us more about that. This is very important.
In terms of actually getting this virus genome sequence, identifying potential drug targets actually for this novel coronavirus, that actually shouldn't be much a concern. In general, drug targets were naturally existing matters are not patentable. So in that sense, actually, this coronavirus genome or specific targets actually for this coronavirus, it's not really patentable.
I see.
So those knowledge, those information actually would be actually would be actually really early stage of research. That can be actually knowing those information and releasing those information typically would actually accelerate drug discovery and development.
But would people, would the researcher be able to discover that specific target, for example, usually willing to come to the public and release the information, or they would rather hold it back for their own use?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is really for a very early stage of research, those information can be made publicly available very fast, very soon, and that can accelerate actual discovery. But downstream of those early information, in terms of what molecule, what specific molecule, man-made molecule actually can target those viral drug targets, we're actually using a specific fragment of those viral sequences for developing vaccine. Those actually information or those knowledge, new knowledge, would be patentable. And again, I think in general, people would not really have a big concern in that regards. Basically, there are many ways actually for each, let's say for each target, there will be many ways actually to develop a molecule. What people would do is really people patent that first, and then actually release such information later on. But also for particularly in this case, this is epidemic viral outbreak. This is a public health, global health issue. For this type of disease, actually, what people have done in the industry in the past is really the patents actually can be granted to actually country or to a certain situation where actually the drug is in need, and actually people would not actually really make very much a commercial return actually on such drug development. Certainly, that international collaboration or partnership actually have previously been done. Certainly, I personally think actually this can also be actually done in this case. So I would say actually at this stage, properly, timely releasing all those information and also exercise typical practice is important, but also actually promoting international mutual trust and the collaboration actually is essential to really accelerate the drug discovery and development.
Professor Sheng Ding from Tsinghua University. Stay with us. We'll be back after this. The world is changing fast, taking all our lives with it. But we can change it too, by seeking answers to problems through discussions and debates. On World Insight, I ask direct questions to real people in the know, seek genuine answers, but respect diverse perspectives. Our live global debates tackle the most critical issues head-on. World Insight with Tian Wei go beyond the headlines. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. There is no known cure, as we all know, right now for COVID-19. And doctors are eager to help those infected, but scientists caution that only carefully conducted trials will determine which measures work. What have clinical experiments revealed? Are there any drugs or vaccines on the horizon? We also asked that question to another expert from China, and particularly the issue whether Chinese traditional medicine help in curing patients. Earlier, I spoke to SHAO YIMING, chief expert on AIDS at China Center for Disease Control and Prevention, otherwise known as China CDC. He's also vice president of Chinese Society of Microbiology. Mr. Shao, what do you make of the current stage of vaccines? Vaccines, are they coming from China or vaccines that are coming from international collaboration? Dr. Shao.
For coronavirus, why we do not yet have a vaccine, there's one main reason is that because in the early times, the coronavirus is just caused mild common cold, so do not trigger the industry to manufacture the vaccine against that. And the last time, like 16, 17 years ago, we have SARS. There are already efforts for vaccine development, including my group. We use the HIV vaccine platform. We also manufactured a vaccine. We finished the animal trial. Because that epidemic has been cleared, fully controlled, so there's not commercial interest. Often, if you don't have a commercial interest, things don't move on. Money talks. But I think at this time, the whole society of China and the scientific community have got a heavy lessons. We could not to look at only the commercial values to decide to move on or not move on. I am pretty determined, pretty much knowing that this time the vaccine will continue. Or soon, traditional vaccine takes, like WHO said, like 18 months. For some new technology vaccine, like nucleic acid vaccine, either RNA or DNA, it can be faster. So we already saw there are scientific group and the companies, both in China and in U.S., they have a plan to go to the RNA vaccine first to animal trial. But there are also uncertainties for this new technology. New technology means also high risk because they have not been tested before. So we still have to wait and see. But anyway, I think the efforts will continue. If the vaccine cannot be used in this epidemic, it will certainly in a vaccine very fast ready for the next epidemic.
Mr. SHAO, let me also ask you about the debate that we've been seeing in China playing out, which is the debate between whether we should use Western medicine or the Chinese medicine. What are likely to be the roles that these two different branches of medicine in terms of treating the patients and also in terms of seeking solutions? Mr. SHAO, that debate happened also during SARS. That debate happened during various public health crises. What do you make of it now, Mr. SHAO?
Traditional medicine can play certain rules there and to maintain the balance of our immune system. But that it's just, in theory. But if which traditional medicine really can help, it has to do the clinical trial. Have to test. Everything has to be, no matter Western medicine or traditional medicine, has to be evidence-based.
Yes, it needs to be evidence-based, particularly at this point. But Mr. SHAO, as you may know, the Chinese medicine or traditional medicine, one of the difficult parts for the rest of the world to understand and also to make it be able to confirm its position in the world has a lot to do with it's difficult for the clinical trial because it's supposed to, the portion, for example, and the different elements being used in the one recipe are varied according to every person it attends to. So it seems that we do not necessarily, during a crisis time, likely to have any result, at least regarding the traditional medicine, isn't it, Mr. SHAO?
I mean, the theory of treatment is different of these two medicines. The Western medicine, you have to find the target, the drug target, and then you look for a drug to can hit that target. So that is their theory. Then in that system, you need a pure compound. We are specific to that target to be considered as a drug. But in traditional medicine, the theory is how to maintain our body's balance. Any disease do not need one specific pathogen. It's just out of the balance. So how to adjust back the balance of our body, for example, in this case, the immune system. You need a recipe which is according to the traditional medicine theory, yin and yang, and how to what is the balance? Is the yin too weak or the yang too strong? So they can adjust back the balance. So that balance not necessarily need just one compound. They can be several. Maybe you have to tune both yin and yang at the same time. So I think the two theories both are useful. It could learn from each other. Especially for this disease, it's not just the virus caused, it's the immune system out of balance. Right. I think you antiviral and you adjust the immune system balance at the same time, it can have a win-win situation.
Another thing, Dr. SHAO, is the debate about so-called the patient number zero, meaning who were or who was the original patient infected by this virus. I know you've been talking to different groups about the debates about this. Tell me more about your assessment and why it matters.
I think that is the source of the new infection. We can get direct information from the patient zero. How this virus jump from animal to human. So what is animal or animal groups who carry this new virus can infect human. So that is why the patient zero is very important for us to know the origin of the disease, the target of the transmitter, and then we can do precising intervention to block the virus from animal to human. And also, a second is that the patient zero, they transmit, he or she transmits virus to other patients. And so that is how to know the what we call the hotspot of this new epidemic. Are they single one or are they several? So these are the critical questions. But oftentimes you find not the patient zero, but the patient one or patient two, which is equally important. And then you should already trigger the prevention campaign. You don't need to waiting for the patient zero. This is what China did at this time. In many countries, epidemic prevention is done like that.
Professor SHAO YIMING from China CDC. That's all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us on YouTube and also our Twitter and Facebook accounts. From Tianwei and everyone on the team, thanks for watching.